After finishing the cleaning in his apartment where he lived alone, Sebastian Nicholas left a farewell voice message for someone. By the time the recipient received the message, Sebastian would no longer be alive. Dressed in a formal suit, Sebastian turned on the gas stove. Soon he lost consciousness, and then an explosion occurred. So 42-year-old Sebastian Nicholas was gone. For those around him, he had never existed, but he was supposed to live. Next, the events take us back in time. In a church, the christening of Sebastian's sister's child was taking place. The mother was very proud of her. Sebastian, however, a modest and unremarkable guy, had neither a wife nor children. But he was happy to take care of the guests at the family party. The priest approached Sebastian and struck up a conversation, including about work. Sebastian worked as a real estate agent. Later, Sebastian's parents asked him if he wanted to visit them over the weekend. Sebastian said he would be busy. In reality, Sebastian spent his weekends alone in his apartment. The weekdays passed in its usual manner as well. Sebastian showed yet another client yet another apartment. Sebastian carefully observed the man, noting the details of his appearance and gestures. At the office, colleagues often dumped extra work on Sebastian since he never refused. After work, Sebastian went to a store and bought shoes exactly like those of his last client, Charles Beaumont. At home, Sebastian listened to a voice message from his mother, asking him to call back. In the evening on public transport, Sebastian saw Charles and followed him down the street. Sebastian spent the entire evening stalking the man, obsessed with the idea of becoming like him. Next we see the makeup making process. This secret room is located right in Sebastian's home. He continued his surveillance and using a duplicate key, went to Charles' apartment. Sebastian wanted to know everything about him. Then Sebastian, using his makeup skills, began to transform. He considered every detail, aiming for maximum resemblance. When the work on his appearance was completed, Sebastian looked exactly like Charles Beaumont. After this he practiced, imitating Charles's voice and manner of speaking. This was Sebastian's secret hobby. He was happy to be someone he was not. His life was too dull, so he could steal someone else's. Under the name Charles Beaumont, Sebastian began attending Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, telling other members of the group that he had owned his flower shop for 5 years and hadn't had a drink in 8 weeks. After this, Sebastian returned to his home, to the secret room specially equipped as a makeup studio. Sebastian removed someone else's mask from his face and put on the wig he usually wore. During the day, he returned to his routine life, and in the evening he attended an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting under the guise of Charles Beaumont. However, that evening on public transport, someone who knew Charles recognized him. Sebastian took off running, but the guy chased after him. Sebastian shouted that he was in a hurry, but the guy didn't back down. In the end, Sebastian managed to get away. At home, he decided that he would no longer transform into Charles. Sebastian visited the priest, not fully understanding why he was here. The priest immediately sensed that something was troubling Sebastian and was ready to listen to him. Barely holding back his emotions, Sebastian explained that he had always done everything expected of him, but he could no longer continue this way. Sebastian wants to change, even though he knows it's wrong. Only in such moments does Sebastian feel alive. Not realizing that the changes in question were physical, not spiritual, the priest said that every person has the right to change. In the morning, Sebastian as usual got ready for work. Nothing in his life brought him joy except the possibility of altering his appearance. It was as if Sebastian had no life of his own. Often he felt like an empty space. Shortly after Christmas in a restaurant, Sebastian met with Elizabeth Traven, who first asked him to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Any information about her clients had to remain strictly confidential. Elizabeth Traven's current client is a public figure. He is French but has been living in New York for a long time. Now this person wants to return to France and is looking for spacious apartments. He has a whole list of criteria. Before meeting the client, Miss Traven asked Sebastian to remove his tie because her client cannot stand the color orange. Henri Dumont turned out to be quite an extraordinary person with quirks. The personal meeting left an impression on Sebastian, and later at home, he carefully studied video interviews with Henri Dumont, noting his gestures and manner of speaking. Sebastian wants to take every detail into account. Even on the subway, he listens to recordings of Henri's voice so that he can better immerse himself in the role later. Then Sebastian began to mimic Henri's voice, his laughter and his way of speaking. Elizabeth praised Sebastian for his excellent work. He had already selected 6 apartments for Henri to choose from. Unexpectedly, Elizabeth mentioned how Henri had been in an accident some time ago and miraculously survived. On that fateful night, Henri was in such a rush to get to his own concert that he neglected sleep and got behind the wheel. At their meeting, Henri asked Sebastian which of the 6 apartments he would prefer. Henri decided to trust Sebastian's choice, suggesting they celebrate the occasion tonight in the company of men. During a heartfelt conversation, Henri confessed to Sebastian that he was dissatisfied with his life. Many people admire his music, but they do not truly understand it. Usually people are boring to Henri because he can see right through them with just one look. But Sebastian is different. It's as if he's invisible. Late at night, Sebastian helped drunken Henri to his apartment. He had a lot to think about. While Henri slept soundly, Sebastian examined his belongings and then began rehearsing Henri's persona in front of the mirror. Now Sebastian is ready to transform. He didn't delay, starting the process of creating the perfect disguise while Henri continued living his dull life. Sebastian took the creation of the disguise very seriously. No one should notice any differences. When Henri vacated the apartment, Sebastian took his place. He cannot live his own life but craves someone else's. Wearing Henri's clothes and completing the disguise, Sebastian fully assumed his new identity. He mimicked Henri's voice, habits, and all of his tastes, so that no one would suspect the switch. Even on the phone, it never occurred to anyone that they were not speaking with Henri. When Sebastian returned to Henri's apartment, he almost ran into a woman. He managed to hide and witnessed a conflict between the real Henri and the woman, who tearfully confessed that she was ill. But Henri still drove her away. Seizing the moment, Sebastian left the apartment and did not expect to encounter the woman on the staircase. It turns out they have a son together, whom Henri does not see because music has always been his only priority. Henri never wanted a family. For Clemence Corneli, Henri was the greatest love of her life, but she knew he could not belong to her and music at the same time. After leaving their new address, Clemens left. Sebastian breathed a sigh of relief. It seems the woman did not suspect that it was not Henri in front of her all this time. This conversation stirred intense emotions in Sebastian. Later, he washed off the makeup and then stared at the photograph of Henri's son for a long time. During the day, Sebastian continues his routine life, but that boy is never out of his mind. Sebastian's life will never be the same. Unable to bear it, he found Vincent Corneli, who like his father plays the violin. Sebastian cannot let go of the situation. Disguised as Henri once more, he went to Clemens. Photographs of Vincent are hanging all over the walls. Finally, Clemens introduced her son to his so-called father. They went for a walk in the park. Vincent confessed to the man he believes to be his father that he had long wanted to meet him, but at the same time he hated him. Sebastian knows that Clemens is ill and that soon in essence Vincent will be an orphan. In the evening, Sebastian received a call from Miss Traven, who informed him that Henri wanted to meet with him and talk. This unsettled Sebastian. At the appointed time they met at a restaurant. Henri asked Sebastian to find him an apartment in Spain. Henri considered moving here a bad idea and had already fired Elizabeth, who had initiated it. Suddenly Clemens burst into the restaurant and yelled at Henri, accusing him of telling their son about her illness. Not understanding what she was talking about, Henri ordered the staff to remove this crazy woman from the place. Sebastian caught up with Clemens, telling her that Henri truly regretted it and supposedly often spoke about Vincent. Back at Henri's table, Sebastian said that Clemens no longer wanted to see him. That evening, Sebastian went to a store to buy a DVD of a movie about father-son reunions. At home, Sebastian watched the film alone. He had always dreamed of having a family. Henri could have had that, but he didn't appreciate it. Now Sebastian needs a son, and Vincent needs a father. Sebastian called him. Clemens was shocked. This was completely unlike the Henri she knew. Sebastian is dissatisfied with his own life, so he wants to take over someone else's. Recently he turned everything upside down in Henri's apartment, simulating a robbery. Sebastian became so engrossed in Henri's life that he started paying less attention to his job, and his boss couldn't help but notice. Clemens did not expect a call from Henri, inviting her and Vincent over. Or rather she thought it was Henri. Every time Henri leaves, Sebastian sneaks into his apartment. Even Henri's dog didn't bark at the stranger. It turned out that this time, Henri was home and had voluntarily passed away. It seems his depression was far more severe than anyone could have imagined. There was a knock at the door. It was Clemens and Vincent. In a state of shock, Sebastian told them to take the stairs because the elevator was broken. In the meantime, Sebastian hastily hid the body in the bathroom. He didn't yet know what he would do next, acting purely on emotion. Clemens immediately noticed Henri's nervous state, but he assured her that everything was fine. Clemens decided to leave Vincent with his father, saying she would pick him up at 11. Sebastian stepped back into the kitchen where he vomited. Meanwhile, Vincent found a letter with his name on it. The boy didn't know it was a farewell note and asked the father to read it aloud. Barely holding back his emotions, Sebastian did so. In his farewell letter, Henri wrote that he had always been selfish and didn't know how to live for others. And he wanted to leave his son the only thing that ever mattered to him, his violin. Unable to hold back, Vincent hugged his father. Later, after Clemens had taken her son home, Sebastian tried to figure out what to do next. He could hide the fact of Henri's demise and permanently take his place. His disguise was so perfect that even those close to Henri didn't notice the switch. Having made his decision, Sebastian placed the body in a box and took it to his apartment. Then Sebastian disguised Henri as himself and left a farewell voicemail. After that, Sebastian left, disguised as Henri. Sebastian returned to Henri's house. Now he had fully assumed someone else's life, leaving his own past behind. But there was one unfinished matter left. After injecting himself with an anesthetic, Sebastian was going to get rid of 2 of his fingers so that he could look exactly like Henri. An explosion occurred. All night Sebastian suffered from pain. The previous night felt unreal. Opening the window, Sebastian felt the fresh breeze, and it brought him back to his senses a little. For Henri, life goes on, while for everyone else Sebastian no longer exists. Sebastian applied his makeup again. Now nothing stands in the way of him living Henri's life. He walked the dog and had breakfast, feeling free for the first time. Of course Sebastian doesn't have the talent for playing the violin, but that doesn't matter. Soon, Pseudo-Henri received a letter inviting him to the funeral of Sébastien Nicolas. He had no reason not to attend. The entire family was absolutely shocked by Sebastian's decision to take his own life voluntarily. The priest gave a eulogy, believing that Sebastian's soul could find peace. At the cemetery, seeing his grieving family, Sebastian felt even more conflicted emotions. A little more time passed, and 2 police officers appeared at Henri's door with questions about the strange circumstances of Sebastian's demise. Trying to act casual and precisely mimicking Henri's behavior, Sebastian nonchalantly told the officers that he had only met with the real estate agent a few times. Sebastian had been looking for an apartment for him. Captain Deveau mentioned that Henri was the last person Sebastian called on Saturday evening before committing the fatal act. The call lasted 40 seconds. Pseudo-Henri said he didn't remember the conversation. It was likely that Sebastian had left a voicemail. Sebastian started spending more time with Henri's son. Every night before bed, the man would remove his disguise. Vincent wanted to know what his father was like when he was young. Answering the questions, Sebastian had to improvise. Vincent was frustrated that the father gave such vague answers to all his questions. The boy felt that his father was pushing him away. The pseudo-Henri explained to Vincent that he was no longer the person he used to be. He was no longer a virtuoso. However, this didn't matter to Vincent. He just wanted to have a father. Sebastian could give the boy that. Sebastian had a lot of unspent love in his heart, and the boy had been missing just that. One day Vincent shared with his father that he was afraid to perform in front of an audience. Sebastian suggested they practice together. Vincent played the violin for his father and for all the people in the parking lot. This helped the boy overcome his fear of publicity. Afterward, father and son had lunch at a restaurant. The relationship between the pseudo-Henri and Clemens was also improving. Clemens mentioned that the police had recently visited her and asked about some real estate agent. Clemens didn't understand why the police were asking her about this, as she was almost a stranger to that person. Sebastian visited Charles Beaumont's flower shop, the man whose identity he had assumed some time ago. However, Charles didn't turn out to be someone whose life Sebastian found suitable. He had to change his disguise again to infiltrate the police station and review the case files. It seemed the police were seriously investigating. This is how Sebastian learned that Henri had become the prime suspect. There was even a warrant out for his arrest. Sebastian didn't have much time to escape. Moreover, the police were constantly watching him. Catching a taxi, Sebastian withdrew some money from Henri's account and then met with Clemens, handing her an envelope containing a paternity acknowledgement. If Clemens signed it, all the property and bank accounts would belong to Vincent. Understanding that this was their last meeting, Clemens asked pseudo-Henri not to leave them, but he had no choice. When the police arrived at Henri's house, no one was there anymore. Soon, Elizabeth received a check from Henri as compensation for the trouble caused by her dismissal. Sebastian left these places to undergo plastic surgery. Vincent was preparing for his first major concert. The boy was sad that his father wouldn't see it. When Vincent stepped onto the stage, the audience greeted him with applause. The boy impressed the audience with his performance. At that moment, Clemens was prouder of her son than ever before. The police were also here, hoping Henri would come to his son's concert so they could catch him. After the concert ended, Sebastian with his altered appearance approached Vincent and hugged him, telling him how proud he was. This brought a smile to Clemens's face. Sebastian didn't resist the arrest. He understood that the police wouldn't comprehend his true motive. All he wanted was to stop living his worthless life and become someone else. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel not to miss more exciting new products. Also, the authors will be pleased if you leave your opinion in the comments.